Now that the housekeeping's been taken care of, we can get started for real.
Exactly. Now that we've been on for an extra couple minutes.
Let me see. I am trying to find. Oh my gosh. It's like my brain fell off today. Okay, there it is. Okay, I'm like, where's my folder with all my stuff in it so we can take notes and figure all this crap out? I found it. I wasn't even looking on the right screen. Nope, not there either.
Oh, no.
Where are you this week, Julia?
So I'm in Jerome, Idaho with my husband's family.
Hi, family.
Yeah, he's just chilling next to me.
Yeah.
This is oh crap. Why do I Coda? This is Coda.
He's like, wait, who's talking to me? Did you say my puppy? Oh, that's so cute.
It's like a mean dog.
Yeah, he's super nice though. He's just a playful thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And stop not responding.
And I think this week it looks like we're just discussing the article we read and like what our example was.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the whole group, meaning just the basics all over again. So
yeah.
Okay.
Then just the link that we're uploading, right? That's it.
I think so. When your group is finished, the discussion take 5 to 10 minutes to write a paragraph telling what was the most important or interesting insight.
Oh, wait, this is week 8, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the week that there's an article we were supposed to read. Do you remember? And then I did not read the article.
That audit.
Thing I didn't do. I was like, what am I missing? I have the article because I work with auditors and there's a lot of stuff that we don't do. So, okay.
I go ahead.
I did familiarity. I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So there's my example was that there's like a lot of people that cause bodily harm, rape, cause death or something. And in like a business, a small business, there's like you can trust people to a certain extent. And in my experience, like my previous boss hired me. He wanted to like interrogate me and ask me a bunch of questions on who I was after he had hired me.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of felt that was wrong, but like, you know, I was kind of honest and told him who I was like before I joined the LDS church. I don't know, it was just really weird after that, but I bet he like figured I would have like taken from him, you know, but it was like the baker that he had hired that had been working for him for like 4 years that would come in and take donuts before the time, like every day before closing, like an hour, we would box up donuts and the clerks and the bakers could come in and take donuts, but he would come before, you know, take a bunch of donuts, and then that would take away from the people of Rexburg, you know, the community. They weren't able to buy all the donuts that they could. So like, it wasn't me that he had just hired, you know, it was one of his EEs that had actually, you know, started taking from him. I brought it up that he should put cameras, you know, and his expression was like, "Is this like one like I won't forget?" You know, and it was like, okay, but you know, he kind of expressed like, certain emotions to me, but when I probably left, like he was talking to the baker in the back, and he was probably talking to him because the relationship that they had was already ongoing when I had gotten there, and it was just more, like him watching out over me when he had someone there already, stealing.
I get what
That was my example.
Sounds like he had like two biases formed. He had one of like you because you had told him your past and he automatically was just like, oh, it must be him. And then another bias where he was like friends with this other cook, I guess, the other worker there. And so he trusted him and didn't think he would steal, whereas he, because of your past or whatever happened, he thought it was you.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That would be super obnoxious. I'd be like, no, listen. My example was, so recently I was helping with some hiring at my job on campus, and one of the guys that we were interviewing to hire knew some of our coworkers. And so I kind of gave the example of like when you're hiring or when you're doing interviews, you need to have, you would form a bias if you knew them previous to them interviewing for the position. So we made sure that the employee who knew him wasn't in on the interviews, but he was able to give us information about him afterwards that, kind of helped us to formulate why we would hire him and why we wouldn't, which was probably, I don't know, not the best thing to do. But anyways, we knew that he would form a bias if he was in on the interview. So that was kind of my example.
Well, and don't you always want to work with your friends?
Yeah, exactly. I think specifically it was examples of my probably what was the bias specific? Personal bias, was that one of the ones? I forget.
I think it was like
it kind of falls under familiarity.
It falls under what?
Attachment.
Attachment.
Oh, familiarity and attachment.
Well,
okay.
yeah, it's kind of both. Like that's. Hold on, let me see.
Yeah, attachment. There we go. That's the one I used. It was attachment.
Attachment. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me. I've just had the craziest week. I'm sorry. We've been in court all week long, so all I've done is listen to people be pissy and argue.
That's okay.
Yesterday, I got to skip the IRS one, though, so that was fabulous. Yay! Thanks, guys. Where's the thing? Okay, hold on. Well, crap. Never mind. I don't know. Okay. I had a lot of bias happening this week, and I'm not sure where it all falls, but we worked with a mediator this week who was all about her bias was towards the husband or against the husband, and basically that he needed to quit being such a, well, colorful words, and basically give her everything. And which isn't really how it works, which, yeah, I mean, without actually doing that. So that was really interesting to see, like, firsthand, like, watch her, like, oh, you deserve this. Oh, no, we're going to go back and talk to him about this. Oh, you're going to get that. I was like, oh, my gosh, wow. And she did. I mean, she went back and she was like, oh, no, this is his lawyer objecting to all of this. We're going to get you everything you get. I'm like,
oh, gosh.
Because we were jointly retained. So we were working both for the expert for wife and husband. And so we had to find like help with the division of property, the division of assets. And so, but yeah, our proposed division was not unfair, but the wife wanted like 60% instead of 40%. And she basically wanted cash. And then she also wanted a monthly stipend of spousal support, which Texas doesn't have spousal support.
Good.
And she was like, I'm entitled to spousal support. How am I going to get this? I don't want to dip into my lump sum of cash monies to,
do whatever she wants to do.
Like, yeah. You need to give me money. And then I want to, I want my, nest over here. We're like, you don't get to have both, sweetheart. So, plus he's going to pay off your house. everybody sells their house in the divorce. Everyone sells the house. And this guy's like, pay for the house. I'm good. I'll get it paid off in 5 years. So,
Oh, wow.
anyways, yeah. So their mediator was, I don't know. I don't know if she was doing the same thing in the other room, the husband, but she was definitely like, oh, you're going to get everything.
She might have had a bias with the woman.
Right. I kind of feel like, are you
Seems like-
divorced? Did you get screwed in your divorce? It sounds like that's what you're thinking.
That's what I'd be thinking.
Well, but the funny thing is, though, is that the judge, we didn't want to go to court because the judge rules so harshly against women.
Huh.
Which is so weird. You wouldn't think it would be that way. But, like, she's not given an inch in her courtroom to anybody. They're like, she's like, you chose to be a stay-at-home mom. You chose to not have a career. He shouldn't have to pay for that.
Sounds like the judge has a bias too.
Yeah. So she's like on the flip side of it. And I'm just like, oh, my gosh. She's like, she's like, no, here's what's going to count against you in court. She's like, this, and this. You ain't getting nothing, honey. Okay? You got a degree. Go use it. So, yeah. So we had a lot of divorce this week. I'm like, where does it really fit in? I told him I was going to use one of my court examples.
Yeah.
I told Professor today. So, I don't really care what we use. It doesn't matter to me because whatever. So, Julie, when was the last time we used yours?
When was the last time what? Sorry?
When was the last time we used your example?
I can't remember. I think last week I either used Daniel's or mine because, and then, to be honest, I can't really remember the last time I used mine. I'm okay using yours or Daniel's though. I
haven't written mine up. I don't mind writing it up. And so.
Well, it looks like for this, we just kind of answer a bunch of questions in the video. And I think we put the link to our video on this piece of paper that we turn in that just has to have a paragraph telling what was most important or interesting that we learned from this discussion.
Oh, okay
Yes.
then.
I think it's different from usual weeks because this week we don't have to come up with an exam question. We just talk.
We were
about
all pretty shocked, right? I know I was shocked about just even bringing up my memory about what I had seen in my position. So, I mean, she was kind of shocked about the divorce situation, all that going on.
Yeah.
Then you had your exam.
I was shocked reading the article. I mean, because it talked about, and Kiki, you said you deal with this a lot, auditing and how auditors are so biased because the clients that they audit for are pretty much paying them and they can get fired if they give them a bad audit. So they're initially giving good audits and ignoring the bad stuff so that they're getting hired and getting money and keeping the client.
So that happens a lot. And what we kind of do though is like we sort of pre-audit. And so they go in and they do, they test, they mostly just go in and like, okay, here's a trial. We're going to take like a trial sample, a small group sampling of transactions or this, that, or the other, of this process and this procedure and this procedure. And so they go in and they fix the problems before any kind of like an IRS audit or any kind of a government audit happens. But there still is a lot of bias involved. And so they do a really good job because they go in, at least in my firm, they still will go in and be like, you know what, you're going to be okay here. And, this number, that's okay. There's still a little bit of that where it's like, you can get around that. And this is how. Here's the big 10 things we've got to fix big time or you're in big trouble.
Okay.
And so there's still, there is bias everywhere, especially like, if it's an internal auditing system, like, because we're outside auditors. And so, we have so many clients, it doesn't matter to us. We don't care. But at the same time, you go and you literally go and like sit at these people's office sometimes for like a month and you just, I mean, you fine tooth it. You're going through like, okay, here's each, like line by line. Sometimes it depends on what process or what part of the process you're in and what the purpose of the audit is. But yeah, it happens all the time where it's like, that's not a big deal, or, you know, and it's like, hey buddy, you know, and so yeah, it can really make or break you. And if you're a harsh auditor, you won't get work because they don't want to pay you. I mean, we'll charge a couple $100,000 just to go in and audit a small company. I mean, but that's because they're like looking through, okay, where's your receipts? We need all of your receipts. Where are they? Well, then you can't do this, you know. And so it can get really brutal. Auditing is not an easy job. It's one of the more difficult side of it because it's so transaction and labor intensive, and so it can really.
So is there an audit where you just go in and count the assets? I know.
There is. Yeah. So there's like an inventory or a valuing audit type that you can go. And a lot of times though, it's just more making sure that your the inventory is accurate, that the equipment is stated properly, what's the depreciation. And so you can do that where you just value assets of a company. And that's going to be, you know, what's the cash, what is, you know, inventory, what's your receivables, that kind of stuff. Oh my gosh, he just wants to love you.
Yeah, sorry.
It's fine. He's like, hello, pet me. If I could let my dogs in here, they would be like in my face. So I get it. No, but yeah, so there are different kinds of audits. And so sometimes it's just about procedure. And that's kind of where you jump over into like A&A, accountability. I don't remember, but where they fix the procedures and put a better one in place. But that a lot of times happens because of an audit. And so it's sort of like a checks and balances thing. But yeah, so, I mean, there's really so many different kinds of that you can do.
Yeah.
So,
That's interesting. Do you think there's a way to like avoid having a bias in like whether it's in auditing or in accounting or in any other type of business interaction?
I think it's always going to be there, even if you see it or not.
Yeah.
No matter how you deal with it.
You can talk a really good talk, but the reality of the situation is that every single person is coming into any situation with their past, with their history, with their knowledge base, with what a professor told them or emphasized, what a previous job or boss or, you know, employee or employer, you know, like you come in with all this different experience. And so your foundation is could be vastly different from somebody else. I mean, have you been in the business for 30 years? And this guy's only been in here for 2. And so you're going to have so much that comes in with it. And so maybe that guy with 30 years of experience is going to be like, you don't need this. This is not important. But this guy had that professor who was like, you have to have this. And he's fresh out of school. No, we don't. Oh, we got to have this, you know. And so you're going to have that. You know, it's going to be that life experience interpretation.
Bias is like a 2-year-old child.
Like what?
That's like a 2-year-old kid, you know, like it has memories, but it doesn't have the words to actually put to the memory. So over time, if you monitor and keep it, you know, going, you'll have words that gather data. You'll have information
that go with that bias.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you can approach the situation going, okay, I know my bias. I know where I stand on this on a personal thing. How do I keep that out of the situation?
In your business.
Oh, what?
Oh, I was just explaining. So we have to write it down.
Go ahead.
So what else is there?
Let's see.
Did you figure out what category you would classify your story as? Did we
Me?
figure out? Yeah.
No.
I wonder if I can pull up the article because I almost want to say that it's probably a mixture. I know that I had a lot of examples where like they were a mixture of bias examples, or if that makes sense. But let me see if I can pull up the article real quick and we can decide. Well, did you read what what Brother Chase submitted about the U.S. Supreme Court case for the First Amendment right versus free speech? Did you?
That was a
yeah.
little bit intense.
I saw some about it, but I didn't read the article. I want to get.
Yeah, I just read what he said as well. I'm not sure if I read the article. The actual like oral agreement I didn't read, but I thought it was interesting. Just kind of the way that's going about, and like how there's if the First Amendment of free speech can cover certain types of your ability of free speech, whereas it kind of can't cover other types of free speech, was what it was getting at, which was interesting.
Yeah, it was. I've always I'm a proponent of free speech, but at the same time, I really don't want you to say the F word in front of my kids, and I might punch you for that. So, yeah. My kid doesn't need to hear that. I don't think it should be printed on your truck. I did see one time, and I really like this one. It was just a little bumper sticker, and it said, "I heart crack horse."
That's interesting.
So
this is my favorite bumper sticker.
Would that be considered bias toward people that have disabilities, like they're amputated, or like people talking about them, and then them having different type of just comments to say or I don't know.
You mean
probably doesn't fall under this.
You mean that article that he posted having relation to a type of bias?
No.
Okay.
Never
mind.
I have a lot of bias. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh no.
Yeah. I know. I'm aware.
Where did we find the article?
The article is linked from.
I'm in my grade still.
I printed it, so I'm just looking at my hard copy.
Well, that works. That works. Just look at your copy then.
Where is it? I don't know where it is. It was a download. Do you want me to send it?
No, it's okay. I think I could probably look in my downloads and find it again.
I think it's in week 1. Due date 1, I mean, of week 8.
Okay. Let me see.
Because it's not in 2. So I was looking for it.
It's okay. So let's see. For business students, let's try and future business students. So I guess the best way for us to, in the future, avoid a bias is to just, maybe not completely avoid it, but we could recognize that we all have biases and maybe to kind of take that into consideration when deciding anything.
Yeah. That would work. I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
I think that's really the only way to, the only way to at least minimize the effect of the decision, from your bias is to recognize, okay, I know I'm going into this situation with this background or this instance, and so this is how I need to make sure that I shut that part off. And so, like mediators or judges, how should they go into the situation? Leave your personal stuff at home. Okay, it's a political season for us. 2 of our judges are up for election, so they're being super hard or they're being super lenient depending on what the current climate is, and their political views. And so, if they would actually just take their bias out, then it would probably help. If they would think, okay, this is the law, this is not a political campaign, but they don't. They keep the political campaign at the forefront of their minds because it's their job. Yeah. So, but I think that that's the best way. Okay, recognize that that's your limitation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would agree. Okay, so the next thing, I think we kind of talked about this, like how, so the article talked about how audit firms are hired, paid, and work with companies they audit. Which results in bad audits. And then asks, do you agree? I think we've pretty much discussed that, like, for the most part, I mean, depending on what type of maybe audits you're doing, because it sounds like your company is an outside auditor, and it sounds like you've got a lot of clients from what you described, and so you do the best you can to help them get the best audits without actually giving a bad audit.
Right. Well, and it's kind of, it depends on how it's being approached. I mean, you can give them a bad audit, but a lot of times they get in early enough that they can fix the problem, and then they're grateful because they're not going to get in trouble. So, but yeah, it kind of just depends on,
how you're auditing them.
What was it that there was incentives to give good audits, so that way that they could keep accounts and gain other. They were, if they had a good reputation, their name.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and that, if you are known for giving great audits, and where's your audit being submitted? What's it being submitted for?
Overlooking that data that.
Yeah. What's it going to go to? Is it going for banking purposes? Is it going for IRS purposes? Like, so what is it? So if you're going to give a good review, if you're going to give a good audit, like, oh, I had an issue with the IRS.
Where's there more flexibility?
More flexibility for taking the bias out, or for who's going to go to?
For giving bias, for accepting.
I would say if it's just going to be like an internal audit, there's a lot more flexibility there. You're going to have more wiggle room to interpret the information, and so when you can work hand in hand with somebody, record keepers or inventory specialists or whatnot at the firm, or where, the company, then you can get their input, and then their life, their experience with work can influence you. So I think when you're going that approach, where you're going to be working hand in hand with the company so closely, and not just going in and saying, everybody out, let's fix it, let us look over everything. But when you're actually doing interviews, and I think that you can get into where, hey, it's my buddy's company. Oh, I know that guy Joe. We were at the party last weekend together, that kind of a thing. I think there's more room to have more bias. But when you're going in and you're just, kind of like a cold call, let's go in here and let's just take care of this. You kind of don't have any preconceived notions, and how does it work, and how is anybody gonna get the company, I'm loving watching all the people behind you. It's cracking me up.
Sorry. Lots of distractions.
No, he cracked open a soda, and I was just like, what's he drinking? I want that right now.
Possibly Diet Dr. Pepper. That's his favorite.
That's my favorite. Oh my gosh. Friends.
They saw you pop open a Diet Dr. Pepper in the background, and she was like, what soda is he drinking? It's her favorite too, so.
I'm from Texas. It's required.
From Texas, it's required, she said. That's awesome.
Okay, let's see.
No, I completely agree, and I think so. It looks like we only have 7 minutes left before we have to upgrade to a paid package.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. Okay,
but
think about this. It says that third question though on the group activity. It talks about article is specifically about auditors. Most of the studies are about human nature in general. A few are specific to lawsuits. Do you think bias was discovered for plaintiffs and defendants leads to a flawed legal system?
Oh, that's a good question. I think we've all decided that bias is everywhere. So it makes sense that it would be with plaintiffs and defendants, which is probably why they have to have legal help to be able to help represent them so that they can kind of eliminate that.
Yeah. But even still, a lawyer's going to come in with their own bias.
That's true. Especially if they're with the defendant or the plaintiff, they're going to be like, well, obviously he's right, or obviously they're right.
Right. Or you're wrong, but here's how we're going to spin this. within legal parameters, this is how we're going to make this situation go your way or not go your way, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that happens. And I mean, because the next question is, since lawyers are advocates, you know, for their clients, how much do you think lawyers are affected by bias? Well, I think that they're going to try to get their client the best deal they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, guilty, not guilty in that kind of a situation, spouse versus spouse. I mean, everybody's going to do what they can. Judges are biased by their own life experience. I mean, they're still bound by the law and legal precedents, but you're still walking into court where maybe they just had a really crappy case.
Yeah.
And they are still affected by that. And that could affect your outcome. And even if you're the greatest person on the planet and you're to be X or your whatever is going to suck, you know, or does suck. I mean, you can get in trouble. So I think it's interesting. It says though, but does this create a flawed system?
Yeah. I go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, no, I don't think it's flawed.
So surprisingly, I agree with you. And the reason I agree with you is because they've got judges, they've got, what are the people, the jury. They've got the judges, they've got jury, they've got the lawyers for the defendant and the plaintiff, they've got the defendant and the plaintiff. So they've got a bunch of people who are involved in the case to make the decision. And so I think with all those biases, they kind of, I don't know, sometimes can eliminate each other.
Balance each other out.
Yeah. That's what I would like to think.
Like, that's almost exactly what I was thinking. I was like, okay, you've got both sides, you've got both legal sets, you have all the witnesses, you have all these people on the panel, what is it when they're picking the jury? Whatever that's called, jury selection.
Yeah.
But they try to weed out the extremists, you know, like, what's the best thing to say when you're in for jury duty? And I'm like, I believe in the death penalty.
Yeah, I'm a racist. Yeah, things like that.
I believe if you go to jail once, you get to stay in jail.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, yeah, like, go really big. Oh, people should not be able to own small businesses ever.
I have a bias, and I'm going to let you know it, so I'm not a jury.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, but you know, but you've got, you know, Susie Homemaker over here, and you've got, you know, Joe the CEO, and then they're gonna come in with very, very different, you know, and they're gonna level each other out through conversation, through experience, through hearing. And so I think that that's why it's not flawed. I think that that's actually what makes it perfect.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and if you had a really crappy lawyer who didn't advocate for you, then that's on them.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you know, it was that somebody in the system failed, but that doesn't make it a flaw. That just means that something better needs to be done. You know, that's what appeals are for. So
it's like not being like, you can't be more lenient on someone who has a disability that hits a cop versus like someone that doesn't have a disability and like does the same crime. You know, like that'd be biased just because one person, say, is missing an eye and he hits a cop. You know, they can't give him less time just because of the fact that he hits an eye. You know.
Yeah.
If like someone that has both working eyes, you know, hits a cop.
Yep.
I think that's where in like the system it plays, you know.
Yeah.
Corruption.
I would completely agree.
Yeah. And there's some things that, I mean, it's not necessarily a bias, but it's the ability to be able to perform. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's not bias. That's just the reality of the situation is that there's a safety issue or there's a something issue that's going to affect not just the individual or like the running of the company, but it could affect other people. And so I think that there is that. I mean, but that to me that's not necessarily bias. Like my friend, he's disabled right now. He's technically disabled. And he could lift 50 pounds, but he's not supposed to lift 50 pounds, so he can't have a job. As a man, a big, like 6'4" tall black man can't get certain jobs because he's not supposed to be lifting over 30 pounds. And so that's just like his restrictions that he has to have right now. And so it's not a bias. It's just the reality for his safety and his health and well-being that had to be in place. And so, but I mean, in the case of if someone's missing an eye, well, if you're going to be doing forklift driving, you have to have both. you know, and that's not a bias. That's the reality of the situation. As much as you maybe want to be a forklift driver, but I have 2 good eyes and I really struggled to drive a forklift when I worked in a pipe yard. So, yeah.
It looks like we have less than a minute left.
Oh my gosh.
So
No.
I think we, to be honest, I feel like the last questions we have discussed throughout this, like opportunities for bias. I mean, we discussed it in each of our examples, like in hiring, in working at different shops, businesses, the donut shop was your example, or the bakery. And then like
court for me.
Yeah, and court for you, and auditing. So it was, just court. But we talked about
accounting majors.
I'm marketing. You're an accounting major?
I'm a forensic accountant.
Oh, that's right. Duh.
So this one was a fun one for me.
How would the second to last question be answered?
If you're an accounting major.
From reading this article.
What will you do about what you learned from reading this article? One, I'm not going to be an auditor. I think that it's just, bias is so hard. I mean, like, it really is. But it's just, I think, can you overcome bias? Yeah. Is it hard? Yeah. Best way to do it is recognize the bias is there and do